She was caught on a blind date by her billionaire boss. Then he whispered, "Why didn't you ask me instead?" She thought it was just a harmless blind date. One quiet dinner, one chance to move on. Until the restaurant door opened, and her billionaire boss walked in, the air froze. Her heart stopped. He wasn't supposed to see her like that, nervous, hopeful, trying to forget him. He didn't interrupt, didn't cause a scene. He simply leaned closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear, and whispered, "Why didn't you ask me instead?" In that moment, everything changed. Because some dates are accidents, and some feelings were never blind at all. Before we continue, before the story begins, please subscribe to Lumen Tales. Your support helps me keep creating these long, meaningful stories for you. Now, let's get back to the story. Why didn't you ask me instead? Julian Hale's voice was quiet, almost gentle. That was what made it dangerous. Elena Moore felt the words before she understood them. They slid under her skin, caught behind her ribs, and stayed there. She didn't look up right away. Her hands were folded too neatly beside her plate, fingers pressed together as if holding something fragile from shattering. Around them, the restaurant breathed. Cutlery clinked. Someone laughed too loudly near the bar. A waiter paused mid-step. But at their table, time had folded inward. This wasn't how the night was supposed to go. She had chosen the restaurant because it felt safe. Warm light, white tablecloths. The kind of place where no one rushed you, where the servers remembered names and poured water without asking. A place for a quiet reset. One dinner, one polite conversation. One attempt at being seen as a woman again, not an assistant who stayed late and spoke softly. Across from her sat Mark Kindwell, meaning Mark, who had been introduced by a friend with too much hope in her voice. He was in the middle of explaining his recent attempt at sourdough bread, hands moving enthusiastically, when the air shifted. Elena had felt it before she saw it. Julian Hale didn't enter rooms loudly. He never had to. The door opened and something in the room rearranged itself around him. Heads turned. Then turned away again, as if people weren't quite sure whether they were allowed to look. He wore a dark suit, no tie. The jacket fit him the way authority fit him, without effort. His hair was perfectly styled in that unfair way that suggested he hadn't touched it at all. The watch at his wrist caught the light briefly, then disappeared beneath his cuff. Elena's breath caught. He wasn't supposed to be there. Her boss, no, the CEO, had no reason to be in this neighborhood at this hour in this restaurant. She knew his schedule too well. She'd booked his flights, rescheduled his meetings, ordered his lunches when he forgot to eat. She knew the rhythm of his life the way one learns a language without ever speaking it aloud. Julian stopped when he saw her. Not shocked, not angry, unsettled. It was the look of a man who had just found a missing piece in the wrong place. He approached their table without asking permission. Mark trailed off mid-sentence, his smile faltering. "Elena," Julian said, his tone unreadable. She stood too quickly, her chair scraping softly against the floor. "Mr. Hale." That was her mistake. The title built a wall neither of them wanted. Julian's gaze flicked to Mark, then back to her. He smiled. Not the charming public one, but something thinner, sharper. "I didn't realize this place did blind dates." Mark cleared his throat. "I'm Mark and you are." Julian didn't answer him. He leaned closer instead, lowering his voice so only Elena could hear. That was when he whispered it. "Why didn't you ask me instead?" The words landed like a dropped glass. Elena's cheeks warmed, her pulse thudded in her ears. She caught the faint scent of his cologne. Clean, restrained, familiar. Too familiar. It reminded her of late nights in glass-walled offices, of coffee gone cold while spreadsheets glowed between them. She swallowed. Because that would have been inappropriate. His mouth curved slightly. "Is this appropriate?" Mark shifted in his seat, confusion giving way to discomfort. "Elena, do you know?" "I'll explain," she said quickly, forcing a smile that felt like borrowed silk. "This is my boss." Mark's eyebrows climbed. "Oh," Julian straightened, reclaiming his space. "Please don't let me interrupt," he said smoothly. "I was just leaving." But he didn't leave. Instead, he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small object. A folded napkin, crisp and white. He placed it gently on the edge of Elena's plate beside the bread basket. Her breath stuttered. She knew that napkin. It was the same one she'd used weeks ago. During a late working dinner at the office, she'd scribbled a reminder on it in blue ink. "Call Mom, pearl brooch, her mother's birthday," a promise she hadn't kept yet. "You dropped this," Julian said quietly. "Thought you might want it back." Their fingers almost touched. Mark watched the exchange like a man realizing he'd wandered into the wrong room. A waiter appeared, sensing tension like a draft. "Would anyone like more wine?" the waiter asked too cheerfully. "Yes," Mark said at once. "Please." Elena shook her head. "Just water." Julian didn't order. He looked at her instead, eyes searching, as if the answer to something important might be written on her face. "I hope you enjoy your evening," he said at last. "Both of you." Then he turned and walked toward a table near the window where a hostess hovered nervously. Only when he sat did Elena realize she'd been holding her breath. Mark exhaled. "Well, that was unexpected." She let out a small humorless laugh. "You could say that." The waiter returned with wine and a basket of warm rolls. Steam curled upward, comforting and ordinary. Mark tore one open and offered her half. "Peace offering," he said gently. She accepted it, grateful for the normally. The bread was soft, the butter melting instantly. A small kindness, a pause. "I should probably say this," Mark continued, lowering his voice. "If tonight's a bad time." "No," Elena said quickly. "Too quickly, it's just work has a way of following me." Across the room, Julian sat rigid, his attention on a menu he wasn't reading. His phone buzzed once. He ignored it. Elena folded the napkin carefully and slipped it into her handbag, her fingers brushing the worn leather where her mother's pearl brooch rested. Safe, waiting. A symbol of dignity passed down, of never lowering your head, even when the room does. She looked up to find Julian watching her, their eyes locked. Something unspoken passed between them. Regret, curiosity, a question neither had asked aloud before. Mark smiled, trying again. "So, tell me about your favorite place to travel." Elena opened her mouth to answer. At that exact moment, Julian's phone lit up again on the table beside him. She saw the screen from across the room, an email subject lined bold and unmistakable: confidential office rumor, Elena Moore. Her heart dropped. Julian's jaw tightened as he read, and slowly, deliberately, he looked back at her. Julian Hale did not look away. The email glowed between them like a lit match, even from across the room. Elena felt the heat of it. Confidential. Office rumor. Elena Moore. The words rearranged the evening in an instant. The bread on her plate tasted suddenly dry. The gentle music faded into something distant and hollow. Julian turned his phone face down with deliberate calm. He lifted his wine glass, took a measured sip, and only then allowed himself to breathe. Anyone watching might have thought him unbothered. Elena knew better. She'd seen that stillness before, right before boardroom decisions that ruined reputations or saved entire departments. Mark noticed her distraction. "Everything okay?" he asked softly. "Yes," she lied, smiling too late. "Just tired." A lie, but a necessary one. Dignity sometimes meant choosing which truths deserved air. Mark nodded, kind as ever. "We can call it an early night if you want. No pressure. Blind dates are awkward enough without surprise billionaires." That earned a small laugh from her. Unexpected. Real. "You're handling this better than most would." "My sister once brought a psychic to Thanksgiving," he said with a shrug. Perspective. Elena laughed again, this time easing into it. A breather, a small mercy. Across the room, Julian pushed his plate away untouched. The server hovered. "Everything all right?" "Sir, fine," Julian replied, though he hadn't taken a single bite. "Could I have a coffee instead, black?" The server nodded, relieved to have a task. Julian's eyes drifted back to Elena without his permission. She was leaning forward now, listening to Mark, her shoulders relaxed in a way he rarely saw at work. She looked younger, somehow freer. And it struck him uncomfortably that he'd never asked himself whether she wanted more than fluorescent lights and endless calendars. The coffee arrived steaming. Julian wrapped his hands around the cup, grounding himself. The warmth steadied him, but it didn't quiet the email's implication. Office rumor. He knew the sender already, Claire Whitmore, head of communications. Brilliant, impeccably dressed, and quietly furious about the way Julian trusted Elena with things he didn't share with anyone else. Claire had charm in spades and ambition to match. She'd once joked, half joking, that Elena was practically invisible until she became indispensable. Julian had laughed then. He didn't now. Elena excused herself moments later. "Restroom," she told Mark, lifting her handbag. As she stood, her heel caught briefly on the chair leg. A near stumble. Julian rose halfway from his seat before he could stop himself. "I've got it," she said quickly, steadying herself, embarrassed. Mark chuckled. First date hazard. Elena smiled, then disappeared down the hallway. Julian sat back down, irritated with himself. In the restroom, Elena braced her hands on the marble sink. Her reflection stared back, composed, elegant eyes a shade too bright. She reached into her bag and touched the pearl brooch. Cool and familiar. Her mother's voice echoed faintly in memory. People will talk. Let them. Just make sure you never give them your posture. She pinned the brooch to the inside lining of her handbag. Hidden but close. When she returned, Julian was standing near her table, jacket over his arm. Mark looked up, surprised. "I won't intrude again," Julian said, polite enough to be cutting. "I wanted to apologize if my presence made things uncomfortable." Mark stood, extending a hand. "No harm done." Julian shook it briefly, then turned to Elena, his voice dropped. "We need to talk tomorrow morning. My office." Her stomach tightened. "About what?" His eyes flicked just once toward his phone. "You know?" Mark glanced between them. "Everything okay?" "Yes," Elena said again. This time it felt heavier, work stuff. Julian nodded. "Good night, Elena." "Good night, Mr. Hale." The wall returned. Julian left cash on the table he'd never eaten at and walked out into the cool night. The city lights reflected off the pavement, blurring like possibilities he'd ignored too long. Back at the table, Mark sat slowly. "I don't think I'm the right man for you," he said gently. Elena blinked. "That's honest." "I don't compete with ghosts," he added with a soft smile. "And I think your boss is very much alive." She laughed despite herself. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I got a good meal and a good story." He gestured to the bread basket, and at least one laugh. They finished in comfortable quiet. A shared dessert arrived. Chocolate cake neither had ordered. The waiter shrugged. "On the house," he said. "Someone thought you might need it." Elena glanced toward the door, but Julian was gone. Outside, she hugged Mark. "Goodbye." "Grateful." "Thank you for being kind." "Anytime," he said. "And for what it's worth, I think you deserve someone who sees you fully." She watched him leave, then turned toward home. The next morning, the office hummed with tension. Emails flew. Whispers curled around cubicles. Elena kept her head high as she walked to Julian's office. Every step measured. The pearl brooch weighed heavier in her bag. Inside, Julian stood by the window. City stretched beneath him. "Sit," he said quietly. She did. He turned, holding his phone. "Claire sent this to the board." Elena's heart thudded. "What does it say?" Julian met her eyes, expression unreadable. "It suggests you're leveraging personal relationships for professional influence." The room seemed to tilt and she asked steady, and he said, voice low, "She attached a photo." He slid the phone across the desk. It was from last night. Her Julian, close, too close. And the caption read, "Is this appropriate?" Julian's gaze locked onto hers. "We need to decide," he said, "how much truth we're willing to tell." Elena didn't touch the phone. She studied the image as if distance might soften it. The angle was precise. Julian leaning in, her face tilted just enough to suggest intimacy. A single frozen second, stripped of context, offered up like evidence. "It looks worse than it was," she said calmly. Julian didn't interrupt. That alone told her how serious this was. "She sent it to 3 board members," he said, framed his concerns. Not accusation. Clever enough to sound ethical. Elena folded her hands in her lap, posture straight. "And what do you believe?" The question landed between them, bare and honest. Julian hesitated. That hesitation hurt more than anger would have. "I believe," he said slowly, "that I put you in a vulnerable position without realizing it." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Oh, that's not an answer." A corner of his mouth twitched. "You've never let me off easy." "No," she agreed, "I haven't." Silence stretched. Outside the glass walls, assistants moved, unaware that reputations were being weighed like currency inside. Julian sat at last, resting his forearms on the desk. "The board will demand transparency. They'll ask whether there's anything between us." Elena's breath caught, though her face stayed composed. "And what will you say that there isn't?" He said, then softer. "Because if there were, it would be my responsibility to declare it to protect you." Protect? The word stirred something complicated. She reached into her handbag and pulled out the folded napkin. The blue ink had faded slightly, but the words were still legible. "Call Mom. Pearl Brook." She placed it on the desk between them. "This," she said, "is what you found. Not secrets, not schemes. Just a reminder from a woman trying to hold her life together." Julian picked it up carefully as if it might tear. "I know. Claire doesn't." Elena continued, "And she won't stop here." Julian nodded. "No, she's afraid." That surprised Elena. "Of what?" "Of being overlooked," he said. "Of losing ground. Of not being the closest voice in the room." Elena let out a small humorous laugh. "So," she picked the quiet one. "She underestimated you," Julian said. A knock interrupted them. "Mr. Hale, coffee." It was Leo, the junior assistant, holding 2 cups and looking painfully nervous. "Yes?" Julian said quickly. Thank you. Leo set the cups down, eyes flicking between them like he'd walked into the wrong chapter of a novel. Cream sugar. Elenina smiled kindly. Just black is perfect. Leo nodded, visibly relieved, and escaped. Julian slid one cup toward her. I didn't order pastries, he said. Progress, she smiled faintly. You remembered. They sipped in silence. The coffee was strong, grounding. A small ritual in a room charged with risk. Elenina, Julian said at last. I won't let this damage you. She met his gaze. Then don't lie for me. Don't minimize me. Tell the truth. And the truth is that I've done my job with integrity, she said. And that whatever you feel, if you feel anything, it's yours to manage, not mine to apologize for. Julian exhaled slowly. You're right. Another pause. Deeper now. There's one more thing, he added. Claire hinted. There may be additional material. Elena's fingers tightened around her cup. What kind of material? Emails, Julian said. Taken out of context. Scheduling notes, late nights, work, she said. Yes, he agreed. But gossip loves shadows, Elena stood. Then we bring it into the light. Julian looked up at her. You're willing to face the board. I faced worse, she said gently. And I won't shrink now. A flicker of something warm crossed his face. Admiration, relief, something else he didn't name. At lunch, Elenina ate at her desk, a simple salad half untouched. Her phone buzzed with a message from her mother. Did you remember the brooch? Elenina smiled and typed back, always. Down the hall. Whispers grew louder. A laugh stopped abruptly when she passed. Someone dropped a file. Micro-Victory arrived unexpectedly in the break room where Leo stood staring at a malfunctioning microwave. It ate my soup, he said miserably. Elena peeked inside. I think it's holding it hostage, he laughed grateful. You always know what to say. She handed him a spoon. Negotiations start with patience, he grinned. You should run the company. Elena Moore's role had quietly expanded far beyond the title on her door. What began years ago as executive support had evolved into strategic oversight, risk coordination, and decisions that often shaped outcomes long before they reached the boardroom. She rarely claimed credit, but the company had been leaning on her judgment for a long time. Later that afternoon, Julian called for a meeting. Board members joined via screen, faces polite, curious. Claire appeared last. Immaculate as ever, she smiled at Elenina with practiced warmth. Julian spoke first. There's been concern raised about my professional boundaries. Claire nodded sympathetically. Only concern, Julian. Transparency matters. It does, Julian said. Which is why Elenina Moore will speak for herself. Claire's smile faltered just a fraction. Elena stood heart steady. She placed her handbag on the table, the pearl brooch glinting briefly as it caught the light. I'm proud of my work, Elena said. And I won't apologize for proximity mistaken as privilege. Screens went quiet. Julian watched her. Something solid forming in his chest. But before Elena could continue, a new notification chimed across every screen. A subject line appeared simultaneously. Forward private message thread. Unfiltered. Elena's breath caught. Julian's eyes darkened and Claire's smile disappeared entirely. The chime echoed longer than it should have. Every screen on the board call froze for half a second, then refreshed. Faces leaned closer. Brows furrowed. Someone adjusted their glasses. The subject line hovered there, undeniable. Forward. Private message thread. Unfiltered. Julian's hand moved first. He reached for the keyboard, instinct sharp, but the system lagged. Someone on the board cleared their throat. I'm opening it, said Mr. Langford, the oldest among them, his voice steady with age and authority. Elena didn't stop him. She stood with her shoulders back, hands relaxed at her sides. Inside, her heart knocked once, hard then settled. Fear had a way of burning itself out when dignity took its place. The messages filled the screen. They weren't romantic. They weren't secretive. They were ordinary. Calendar clarifications, late-night reminders. One message from Elena at 10:42 p.m. You forgot to eat again. There's soup in the fridge downstairs. Julian's reply. Thank you. You shouldn't have stayed up. Another weeks later, board moved the meeting. I'll adjust your flight. You always do. A pause followed. Then buried among them a message from Claire. Sent not to Julian but to herself. Accidentally included in the thread she'd forwarded. She thinks she belongs in rooms like this. Needs to be reminded where she came from. The silence that followed was heavier than any accusation. Claire's face drained of color. That she began, then stopped. That message wasn't meant to be shared. Mr. Langford leaned back. Funny how truth finds its way out. Julian's voice was calm, controlled. These messages show no misconduct. Only professionalism and care. added another board member quietly. Human care. Elenina felt something loosen in her chest. Not triumph, relief. Claire straightened, trying to recover. My concern was perception. Optics. Julian repeated. Or control. Claire met his gaze. A flicker of something raw crossing her eyes. Fear maybe. Or grief for a version of herself that never got chosen. The board chair spoke at last. This discussion ends here. Elena Moore's record stands untarnished. A collective exhale rippled through the screens. The call ended. Julian turned to Elena. For a moment neither spoke. Then he said quietly, "You handled that with more grace than anyone I know." She allowed herself a small smile. "I learned from watching." He glanced at the handbag on the table. "Your brooch." She touched it instinctively. "My mother's. It suits you," he said. Strong, unassuming. She hesitated. "Julian, last night we should talk," he agreed. "But not here." At lunch, the office cafeteria buzzed with a different tone. Whispers softened. Smiles returned cautiously. Elena carried her tray, soup, bread and apple, toward a corner table. Julian joined her without ceremony, sleeves rolled up, jacket gone. A simple meal, no audience. "This feels oddly rebellious," he said. Glancing around, she chuckled. "Careful, someone might take a photo." He tore his bread in half and offered her the larger piece, then let them. They ate quietly for a moment. The soup was warm, comforting. "I didn't plan to walk into your life like that," Julian said. "Last night, I know," she replied. "Neither did I, a beat. I meant what I asked," he added. "Why you didn't ask me?" She met his eyes. "Because power complicates honesty." "And yet," he said softly, "it didn't stop you from standing up today." A small laugh escaped her. "You noticed that." "I notice more than you think." Their trays emptied slowly. A micro-victory in the ordinary. Shared bread, shared quiet. As they stood to leave, Leo passed by, grinning. "Microwaves fixed," he announced. "Peace treaty signed." Elena laughed. Julian shook his head. "You're indispensable," he told her. Later that afternoon, Elena returned to her desk to find an envelope waiting. Cream-colored, no sender. Inside was a single printed photo, her blind date table, Julian leaning in, and on the back written in neat handwriting, "Some stories don't end when you think they do." Her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. "We need to talk tonight." See, Elena closed her eyes. Outside her window, the city shifted toward evening, lights blinking on one by one, and somewhere between fear and resolve, she knew this wasn't over. The message from Claire sat on Elena's phone like a pebble in her shoe, small, impossible to ignore. "Tonight we need to talk." Elena didn't respond right away. She slipped the phone into her bag, fingertips brushing the pearl brooch again, as if checking that it was still there, still steady. Around her, the office eased back into its routines. Printers hummed. Someone laughed too loudly at a desk joke. Normal life resumed, which felt almost suspicious after the morning storm. Julian appeared beside her desk near 5, quiet as always. "Do you have plans tonight?" She hesitated. "Possibly." His eyes searched her face with Mark. A corner of her mouth lifted. "No, with consequences." He exhaled a small, helpless laugh. "Claire." "Yes." Julian leaned a hip against the edge of her desk. Careful to keep space. "I don't like the idea of you meeting her alone." "I don't either," Elena said gently. "But this isn't something you can fix for me." "I know." He nodded once. "Where she suggested Leander's." Julian grimaced. She would. Leander's was old money disguised as charm. Linen napkins, heavy silverware, a place where reputations had long memories. "I'll be nearby," Julian said, not watching, just close enough. Elena considered him, then nodded. "Thank you." At home, she changed with care. Not armor, not surrender. A soft blue blouse, tailored trousers, low heels she could walk away in if she needed to. She pinned the pearl brooch to the inside of her jacket, hidden, present. Leander's glowed when she arrived, candle light reflecting in the windows. Claire was already there, seated perfectly straight, a glass of water untouched. "Elena," Claire said, standing. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for asking," Elena replied, taking her seat. A waiter arrived instantly. "May I start you with something to drink?" "Tea," Elena said, chamomile. Claire blinked. "Tea, it helps me think." Elena said, pleasant. Claire ordered wine. They studied menus in silence until the waiter returned with bread, warm, crusty, and a small dish of olive oil. Helena tore a piece and dipped it. The simple act grounding her. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," Claire began, folding her napkin. "This morning, which part?" Elena asked calmly. "The forwarding or the message where you questioned my right to be in the room?" Claire's jaw tightened. "I was under pressure. So was I," Claire sighed. "Some of the Polish slipping. Do you know what it's like to spend 10 years climbing, only to watch someone half your age become indispensable without trying. Elena chewed thoughtfully. I tried quietly. Claire laughed once, bitter. You don't even hear it. The tea arrived, steam curling upward. Elena wrapped her hands around the cup. You could have spoken to me. Would it have changed anything? Claire asked. Yes, Elena said. I would have listened. Their meals arrived. Salmon for Claire. Pasta primavera for Elena. Colors bright, hopeful. Claire pushed her food around. Julian doesn't see people like you the way he sees people like me. Elena looked up. People like me. Support, Claire said. Behind the scenes. Elena smiled softly. Behind the scenes holds the building up. A pause. Claire's shoulders sagged. I sent that photo because I was afraid. Afraid of being replaced. Afraid he'd stop needing me. He doesn't stop needing people. Elena said. He stops trusting them. Claire flinched. They ate in uneasy quiet. A micro-victory came in the form of a clumsy busboy who nearly dropped a stack of plates. Claire caught one reflexively. Elena caught another. They exchanged a surprised laugh. Brief human. Still got it. Claire muttered. Dessert menus arrived. Elena declined. Claire ordered one anyway. 2 spoons. Truce. Elena nodded. For tonight? As they shared a slice of lemon tart, Claire reached into her purse and slid something across the table. A printed contract addendum. I was going to push for this, Claire said. A reassignment you to a satellite office. Elena's heart dipped. And now Claire folded her hands. Now I won't. I'll withdraw it tomorrow publicly. Elena met her eyes. Why tell me? Because Claire said quietly. You deserve to know what you survived. Elena slipped the paper back. Thank you. Outside the night air was cool. Elena stepped onto the sidewalk, breath easing. Her phone buzzed. Are you okay, Julian? She typed back. I will be. She walked a few steps, then stopped. Across the street, a figure leaned against a lamppost. Julian trying and failing to look casual. She crossed over. You said you wouldn't watch. I lied. He admitted badly. She smiled. Come on. They ducked into a late-night cafe. All mismatched chairs and soft jazz. Julian ordered coffee. Elena ordered hot chocolate. They shared a slice of banana bread, laughing when powdered sugar dusted Julian's sleeve. This is dangerous, he said. People might think we're human. She brushed the sugar off him. Perish, the thought. The moment lingered. His hand hovered, then rested near hers, not touching. Elena, he said, voice low. I want to be clear about us. Her pulse quickened. Clear is good. I won't pursue anything that puts you at risk, he said. But I won't pretend I didn't ask that question for a reason. She reached into her bag and placed the folded napkin between them. Some reminders matter, she said. Some questions do too. Their eyes met. Outside the cafe window, a phone camera flashed. Julian's gaze flicked toward it, jaw tightening. Elena followed his look and saw a familiar silhouette across the street, already walking away, Claire holding a phone. The flash lingered in Elena's vision longer than it should have. Julian stood at once, instinct sharp. Stay here, she didn't. She never had. By the time they reached the cafe door, the street was already thinning. Cars gliding past, a couple arguing softly near a bus stop, laughter spilling from somewhere down the block. Claire was gone. Or maybe she'd never been there at all. That was the trick with perception. Once planted, it grew whether or not it was real. Julian scanned the sidewalk, jaw tight. She took a photo. Or she wanted us to think she did, Helena said quieter than she felt. Either way, it worked. They stood there a moment, unsure what to do with the night now that it had teeth again. Walk you home? Julian asked. She nodded. I'd like that. They walked without touching, close enough to share warmth, far enough to respect the lines they kept drawing and erasing. The city hummed around them. Elena noticed how Julian slowed his pace to match hers, how he angled himself slightly toward traffic. Small things, telling things at her building. They paused beneath the dim lobby light. I don't regret tonight, Julian said. Whatever comes of it. Neither do I, she replied. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and held out something small. The napkin still folded, still carrying her blue ink reminder. You left this, he said. She smiled, taking it. It keeps finding its way back. So do questions, he said softly. She watched him leave, the weight of unsaid words, settling gently, not painfully. Inside she pinned the pearl brooch to her night blouse, a habit now, like a promise to herself. Morning brought rain and a headline not public yet internal. A company-wide email sent at 7:12 a.m. subject clarifying boundaries and transparency. Julian had written it himself. Elena read it twice. It was careful, ethical, clear. He disclosed nothing personal, reaffirmed professional standards, and announced a temporary adjustment. Elena would report directly to the COO for 60 days to ensure objectivity, a protective move. Also a distance. Her phone buzzed with messages, some supportive, some awkward, some asking questions they pretended not to ask. Leo sent a single thumbs up and a photo of the microwave with a post-it. Still working. She smiled. By mid-morning, Claire appeared at Elena's desk. No entourage, no smile. Coffee. Claire asked. Elena blinked. Now Claire nodded. Neutral ground. They ended up in the small cafe across the street. Rain streaking the windows. Claire ordered espresso. Elena ordered oatmeal and tea. Breakfast at 10:00, unplanned, grounding. I didn't post anything, Claire said immediately. Last night? Elena stirred her tea. I didn't say you did, Claire winced. I thought about it. I didn't send it, Claire said again, quieter now. But I wanted to, and that scared me more than anything else. I know, they ate quietly. The oatmeal was warm, cinnamon sweet, a humble meal that softened the edges. I withdrew the addendum, Claire said. Sent the email this morning. Thank you. Claire studied her. Julian cares about you. Elena met her gaze. That's his truth to manage. Claire exhaled. I wanted what he gives you, trust. Elena asked gently. Yes, Claire said. And attention. Elena nodded. They're not the same. A pause. Then Claire laughed short and surprised. God, you're annoying. Elena smiled. I've been told. They stood to leave. Claire hesitated. If anything surfaces, anything at all, I'll tell you first. I appreciate that. Back at the office, a meeting notice popped up. Mandatory. All staff noon. The room filled quickly. Julian stood at the front composed. The CO beside him. Claire in the second row. Julian spoke plainly. I won't allow insinuations to replace facts. Elena Moore has my respect. Any concern should be addressed through proper channels. A murmur. Relief. Some disappointment too. Drama denied. Afterward, Elena ate lunch alone at the small park nearby. Soup from a paper cup. Bread balanced on her knee. Rain softened to mist. A woman on the next bench shared her umbrella without asking. They exchanged a smile, micro-victory. Her phone buzzed again. A number she didn't recognize. I have the photo. We should talk. Her stomach tightened. Elena, who is this? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then a message arrived. Not a name, just an image. The photo, not the cafe, the restaurant. From the blind date night, a different angle. Her face turned up. Julian's shadow close and beneath it. Text typed in all caps. This looks personal. Elena closed her eyes, steadying herself. She touched the brooch through her coat, the pearl cool and certain. Across town, Julian stared at his phone as a similar message arrived. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed his jacket. Because some lines once crossed demanded answers. And this time the question wasn't, why didn't you ask me? It was, who was watching all along? Julian didn't call first. He showed up. Elena heard the knock just as she was setting a kettle on the stove. The quiet ritual of tea meant to steady a day that had already slipped its leash. The sound was firm, controlled him. She opened the door without asking who it was. He stood there, rain damp, jacket unbuttoned, eyes sharp with a concern he wasn't bothering to hide. You got it too, she said. Yes, she stepped aside. Come in. Her apartment was modest but warm. Books stacked with intention, not decoration. A small dining table near the window, framed photos of her mother at different ages. Laughing, serious, proud. Julian noticed all of it in the way men do when they're trying to understand a life, not just admire it. She poured water, hands steady. Tea, please. They sat at the table at the steam rising between them. Elena placed a small plate of biscuits in the center, plain, lightly sweet. A shared habit now, quiet sustenance before difficult truths. Julian set his phone down, screen dark. The numbers blocked, but the photos real. Yes, Elena said. Different angle. Same night. They're implying a pattern. They're implying access. She corrected. He nodded. Someone was watching. Before Claire, before the board. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the folded napkin, smoothing it on the table. That night matters. It keeps coming back. Julian studied it. You wrote this at the office. Yes. Which means the photo could have come from inside, he said. A chill passed through her. Or someone who followed us. They drank their tea. The kettle clicked softly as it cooled. I won't let this turn into a spectacle, Julian said. Not for you. Elena met his gaze. Then we do this the right way. Slowly, cleanly. He hesitated. That might mean stepping further back. Publicly, I know, she said. Dignity has a cost. A knock interrupted them. Lighter this time, tentative. Elena frowned. I'm not expecting anyone. She rose, opened the door. Mark stood there holding a paper bag, rain dripping from his hair. I hope this isn't weird, he said. Your friend Laya said you'd had a day. I brought soup. Julian stood immediately. I should. No, Elena said quickly. Stay. Mark glanced between them, then smiled a little awkward. Billionaire. Julian almost laughed. Julian. They sat together at the table. 3 chairs pulled close. Elena ladled soup into bowls. Chicken simple, comforting. The steam softened the tension. I won't stay long, Mark said. Just wanted to make sure you're okay. I am, Helena said. Thank you. Mark's eyes flicked to the napkin. You always write reminders on those. She smiled. Bad habit. Good one, Julian said quietly. They ate. The soup did its quiet work. Mark told a short story about a disastrous cooking class that ended with a smoke alarm and a standing ovation. Elena laughed. Julian shook his head, smiling despite himself. A breather necessary. As Mark stood to leave, he paused. For what it's worth, someone asked me today if I knew you. Elena stiffened. Who didn't say? Mark replied. Just curious. Wanted to know if we were still in touch. Julian's expression hardened. Mark held up a hand. I didn't give them anything. I said you were private. Thank you, Elena said softly. After he left, the apartment felt smaller, quieter. Julian paced once, then stopped. This is escalating. Yes, Elena agreed, but clumsily. He turned to her. What aren't you telling me? She took a breath. When I first started at the company, I reported a data irregularity. Minor. It involved communications logs. Julian's eyes sharpened. What kind of logs? Internal messaging access. She said someone had elevated permissions they shouldn't, and it was flagged, she said, then quietly reassigned to Claire's department. Julian's jaw tightened. So, this isn't about us. No, Elena said. It's about control and fear of exposure. He stopped pacing. We need legal eyes on this. Yes, she agreed. But not yet, he studied her. Why wait? Because whoever this is wants us reactive, she said. If we stay calm, they get impatient. I'll pause. Helena, Julian said, voice lower. If this puts you at risk. She stepped closer. I won't disappear. Their closeness hummed, charged but restrained. He didn't reach for her. She didn't ask him to. Her phone buzzed on the table, a number she didn't recognize. Tomorrow, noon, you alone. Bring the pearl. Elena stared at the message. Julian read it over her shoulder. They know about the brooch. Her hand went instinctively to her chest. That means they've been watching longer than we thought, he finished. She looked up at him steady despite the tremor in her fingers. I'm going. No, he said immediately. Yes, she replied. Because this ends when the truth is face to face. He exhaled sharply. Then I'm close. Not seen. She nodded. Close enough. She folded the napkin once more, placed it carefully into her bag beside the brooch. Outside the rain stopped. The city held its breath. And somewhere between noon and courage, someone was about to be unmasked. Noon arrived with an almost insulting normally. The sky was pale blue. Traffic moved on schedule. A food truck across the street did brisk business, with office workers laughing into paper cartons. If Elena hadn't known better, she might have believed the world had decided to be kind again. She hadn't told Julian where she was going, only when. That was deliberate. The message had given coordinates instead of a name. An older municipal building near the river, half offices, half forgotten storage. The kind of place that survived on habit rather than purpose. Elena walked there alone, coat buttoned, handbag held close. Inside it, the pearl brooch rested in its velvet pouch, cool and steady. The folded napkin lay beside it, softened by time and handling. She stopped at a cafe on the corner first, not because she needed to, because she wanted to arrive calm. Inside, the smell of coffee and toasted bread wrapped around her like a memory. She ordered soup and half a sandwich, took a seat by the window. The server smiled, slid her tray across the counter, and said, "You look like someone who deserves a quiet lunch." Elena smiled back. "Thank you. I think I do." She ate slowly. Each spoonful grounded her. A woman at the next table struggled with a stubborn lid. Elena leaned over and helped, earning an embarrassed laugh and a grateful nod. A small kindness returned. When she finished, she folded her napkin, out of habit, not thinking, and slipped it into her bag. At 12:11, she walked into the municipal building. The lobby was cool, fluorescent lit, sparsely furnished. A security desk sat empty. A handwritten sign pointed toward Conference Room B, temporary use. Her heels echoed as she followed it. The door to Conference Room B was ajar inside a long table. A pot of coffee already poured. 2 cups set out. A plate of store-bought cookies in plastic wrap. Someone had tried to make this look ordinary. Elena stepped in. The door closed behind her. She turned. Not Claire. Leo stood there pale and shaking, his badge clipped crookedly to his jacket. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. I didn't know how else to do this. Helena's heart lurched, not with fear, but something closer to disappointment. Leo, he gestured helplessly. Sit please. I brought coffee. She did slowly, carefully. You sent the messages she asked, he nodded. I took the photos too. Why? Her voice stayed even. Why me? Leo swallowed. Because you saw something years ago, the logs. Elena felt the pieces slide into place. You had access. I still do, he said, eyes wet. I fixed things quietly for people who paid. Claire wasn't the first. And when I flagged it, Elena said, you panicked. Yes, he whispered. I thought if I could discredit you just a little, no one would look back. She closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, her gaze was steady. You dragged others into this. I never meant to hurt you, he said quickly. Or Julian. I just needed leverage. Elena reached into her bag and placed the pearl brooch on the table. Leo stared at it. That's why I asked for it. Proof you'd come alone. You didn't need it, she said. You already had my attention. He laughed weakly. You always did. She slid the brooch back into her bag. You know this ends with consequences. Yes, he said. That's why I asked you here. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a flash drive, placing it between them. Everything, he said. Logs, messages, payments, names. Elena's breath caught. Why give this to me? Because you'll do it clean, he said. You won't twist it, and because his voice broke. You were kind to me even when you outranked me. She didn't reach for the drive yet. Julian is close, she said. I know, Leo said quietly. I saw him across the street. Elena's jaw tightened. Then the stops now, she stood. We'll walk out together. Leo shook his head. No, I'll wait. She paused, then nodded. That's your choice. As she reached for the flash drive, the door opened. Julian stepped in, followed by 2 security officers. Leo closed his eyes. Julian's gaze went first to Elena. Are you hurt? No, she said. But it's done. She handed him the flash drive. Julian looked at Leo, then back at her. You shouldn't have been alone. She met his eyes. I wasn't outside. As Leo was led away, Julian guided Elena to the cafe across the street, the same one she'd visited earlier. He ordered food without asking. Soup, bread, tea. They sat in silence until the bowls arrived. You were brave, Julian said at last. So were you, she replied. For trusting me. He reached across the table, not touching, but close. When this is over, I want us to choose what comes next. Not rumors, not fear. She nodded. I want that too. Across the street, a reporter raised a camera. Julian noticed first. He stood blocking the view with his body, one hand steady on the table near Elena's, and for the first time, he didn't move away. The camera click was soft, almost polite. Julian didn't flinch. He simply shifted his stance so the reporter's lens caught nothing but his back and the cafe window's reflection. Elena felt the change immediately, the way his presence became shelter rather than spectacle. Finish your soup, he said quietly. I've got this. She did because strength sometimes meant trusting someone else to hold the line. Outside, voices rose, not shouting yet. Questions tossed like hooks. Mr. Hale, is it true? Julian, are you confirming a relationship? Was there a cover-up? Julian stepped outside alone. Elena watched through the glass as he spoke, hands relaxed, posture open. No arrogance, no retreat, just control. Inside, the server refilled Elena's tea without asking. On the house, she murmured. Rough day. Thank you, Elena said, meeting her eyes. Minutes stretched, Elena breathed. She touched the pearl brooch through her coat, grounding herself around her. Life continued. A couple argued gently over a menu. A child dropped a spoon and giggled when it clattered. A micro-victory arrived in the form of banana bread again, this time delivered with a wink. He ordered it before he went out, the server said. Elena smiled despite herself. When Julian returned, his face was calm but drawn. He slid back into his seat, exhaling slowly. They'll run something, he said. But not what they hoped. She tilted her head. What did you tell them? The truth, he replied. That there is an internal investigation unrelated to personal relationships. That I won't comment on private lives and that Elena Moore is a valued executive whose integrity is not in question. Her throat tightened. Thank you, he shrugged lightly. I meant every word. They ate the banana bread together, sharing the last piece without comment. Crumbs, sugar normally. By evening the story broke anyway. Not scandal exposure. An article went live naming a junior systems employee under investigation for unauthorized access and coercion. No photos of Elena, no insinuations. Claire's name appeared only as a department head cooperating fully. Julian forwarded the link to Elena with a single line. It's turning. She replied with a heart, then erased it, then sent thank you. At the office the next day, the mood was different. Quieter, respectful, Elelina walked in wearing a simple dress, the pearl brooch now pinned openly at her collar. Heads turned, not with curiosity, but acknowledgement. Leo's desk was empty. Claire stopped Elena in the hall. "I'm stepping down," she said, voice steady, not fired, "but I asked for a leave." "I hope you find what you're looking for," Elena said honestly. Claire nodded. "I think I know where to start." At lunch, Elena sat with Leo's old team sharing sandwiches from a box. Someone spilled mustard. Laughter followed. A small healing mess. That afternoon, Julian asked Elena to join him in the boardroom. No agenda, just them. "I want to say this clearly," he said. "Your reassignment ends today if you wanted to." She studied him and the optics. "I'll handle them," he said, "but only if you want to stay." She smiled. "I do." He hesitated, then added, "There's something else. I've been asked to speak at the Foundation Gala next month. They want a story of integrity." She raised an eyebrow. And I want to bring you," he said, publicly, transparently, as my partner." The words settled between them, heavy and bright. She took a breath. "Then we do it right," he nodded. "Always." That night Elelina cooked for the first time in weeks. Simple pasta. Shared it with her mother over video, laughing when the sauce splattered. Her mother noticed the brooch immediately. "You're wearing it out now," her mother said. "Yes," Elena replied. "I am." Her phone buzzed as they said good night. "Julian, I'm outside." She opened the door to find him holding a small paper bag. "Peace offering," he said. "More banana bread." They sat on her couch, knees almost touching. "No rush, no performance." "Elena," he said softly, "I'm not asking for secrecy. I'm asking for a chance." She reached into her bag and pulled out the napkin, smoothing it between them. "You already asked," she said. That night, he smiled slow and real. "Then I'll ask again." A knock interrupted them. They froze. Julian frowned. "Were you expecting?" Elena shook her head. The knock came again, firmer, through the people. Elena saw a familiar face, her mother holding a suitcase. Elena gasped. Julian blinked. "That's unexpected." Elelina opened the door. "Surprise," her mother said, smiling. "I heard you've been busy," and stepped inside. Elelina's mother filled the doorway the way only mothers do, completely. Decisively, as if space itself adjusted out of respect. "Hi, Mama," Elena said, her voice pitching somewhere between laughter and tears. Her mother stepped inside, suitcase rolling behind her, eyes already cataloging everything. The couch, the half-eaten banana bread. "Julian. And you must be the man who forgets to eat," her mother said pleasantly. Julian straightened at once. "Julian Hale," he said, offering his hand. "I'm honored to meet you." She took his hand, firm grip, warm smile. "Ruth Moore, and I don't scare easily." Elena laughed, the sound bursting out of her like relief. They settled at the table moments later. Julian insisted on cooking, or at least assembling something respectable. Pasta again, this time with vegetables and bread, warmed in the oven. Elena set the table while her mother watched, saying nothing, which was somehow worse than commentary. They ate together, the rhythm surprisingly natural. "So," Ruth said, twirling pasta with care. "I saw the article." Elena stiffened. Julian glanced at her. Ruth waved a hand. "Not the gossip, the truth part. Integrity survives when people insist on it." Julian nodded. "Your daughter insisted." Ruth studied him over the rim of her glass. "Good answer." Elelina caught Julian's eye. He looked nervous. The billionaire CEO reduced to a man hoping to pass a mother's inspection. After dinner, Ruth reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Elena's breath caught. "Mama, I know," Ruth said gently. "But it's time." She opened it. Inside lay the matching pearl earrings to Elena's brooch. "I wore them on my wedding day," Ruth said. "And on the day I left that marriage." Pearls aren't about perfection. They're about endurance. Elena's eyes filled. Julian looked away, giving privacy without distance. Ruth closed the box and placed it in Elena's hands. "Wear them to the gala." Julian looked up. "You know about the gala." Ruth smiled. "I have friends in internet." They all laughed. A breather. Welcome and warm. Later that night, as Ruth slept in the guest room, Julian stood by the window, city light soft beyond the glass. "She approves," he said quietly. Elena joined him. "She sees effort." He turned to her. "I want to make something clear before that night." She met his gaze. "I'm listening." "I'm not asking you to stand beside me for appearance," he said. "I'm asking you to walk with me long term." Her heart thudded. "Julian," he reached into his jacket and pulled out something small. "Not a ring, a key." "My place," he said. "No pressure, just access?" She smiled, touched. "I like that they didn't kiss. They didn't need to." The certainty was quieter, deeper. The week passed quickly. Preparations, fittings, headlines cooled. The narrative settled into something respectable. Elena returned fully to her role, confidence restored. Claire's office was empty now. Sunlight streaming in where tension once lived. On the afternoon of the gala, Elena dressed slowly. The pearl earrings caught the light. The brooch rested at her collarbone. Visible, unapologetic, Ruth adjusted it gently. "You look like yourself," she said. Outside, Julian waited. When Elena stepped into the hall, he forgot to breathe. He stopped, shook his head. "You're exactly who you are." They arrived to cameras and murmurs, but this time the whispers sounded different. Curious, not cruel, respectful. Julian offered his arm. Elena took it. Inside, the gala unfolded with speeches and applause. When Julian took the stage, he spoke of accountability, of quiet courage, of the people who keep things running when no one's watching. His eyes found Elena. "This year," he said, "I learned that dignity doesn't announce itself. It shows up again and again." Applause filled the room. Afterward, as music swelled and couples drifted onto the floor, Julian led Elena aside toward the terrace overlooking the city. He reached into his pocket. This time it was a ring, simple, elegant, certain. "Elena Moore," he said softly. "Will you choose me with clarity, with honesty, and with no yes?" she said. "I already have." Applause swelled around them, warm and unrestrained. Elena laughed through her tears as Ruth clapped first, her smile proud and unmistakable. For a brief moment, nothing else existed but the ring, the hands holding it, and the certainty they had chosen. But just as Julian slid the ring onto Elena's finger, a voice cut through the moment. "Julian." They turned. A board member stood at the terrace door, expression grave. "There's something you need to see," he said. "Now." Julian's smile faded. Elena's hand tightened in his. Because even on nights of triumph, truth sometimes asked for one last word. The board member didn't step fully onto the terrace. He didn't need to. The weight of his words crossed the space on its own. Julian looked at Elena first, not the man with the message, not the city glowing behind them, not the guests pretending not to stare. Elena felt that look settle her. Steady her, as if he were silently saying, "Whatever it is, we face it together. Give us a moment," Julian said to the board member. The man hesitated, nodded, stepped back inside. Music drifted through the open doors. Applause had softened into murmurs. The ring was still warm on Elena's finger. Julian exhaled. "There's one last thing the board has been holding." Elena lifted her chin. "Then let's hear it." They walked back inside together. Not arm in arm, hand in hand. In a quiet side room, 3 board members waited. The atmosphere wasn't hostile, it was careful. Mr. Langford spoke first. "This isn't a problem, it's a reckoning." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were final audit results. Confirmations, signatures. The investigation uncovered something else, Langford continued. Years of subtle misuse of power. Not illegal, but corrosive, cultural. Helena's breath slowed as she read. Julian's expression darkened, not with fear but resolve. The board voted, another member said. Unanimously, Julian looked up. "And we're restructuring executive oversight," Langford said, "including you." Silence followed. Elena felt Julian's hand tighten slightly around hers. "I'm stepping down as sole CEO," Julian said calmly, already understanding, sharing authority. "Yes," Langford confirmed, "and naming Elena Moore as Director of Operations and Ethics. Not as a reward, as a responsibility." Elena blinked. "Me, you saw what others didn't," Langford said, "and you stood when it cost you." Julian turned to her, eyes searching. "You don't have to accept." She thought of the napkin, the brooch, the whispers, the soup shared on hard days. "I accept," she said with conditions. The board smiled faintly. "We expected that." Outside, the gala resumed its glow. When Julian and Elena returned, whispers rippled again, but this time admiration followed. Ruth caught Elena's eye from across the room and nodded once. Proud, certain. Later, beneath softer lights, Julian and Elena stood alone on the terrace again. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I'm proud of us," she replied. He smiled. "That sounds like a future." Weeks later, that future arrived quietly. No spectacle, no press. A small wedding by the river. Ruth in the front row, pearl earrings gleaming on Elena's ears. The brooch pinned to her bouquet wrapped in greenery. Mark attended too, smiling sincerely, raising a glass in goodwill. Julian wore no tie. When Elena walked toward him, he didn't see the world behind her, only her. Their vows were simple, clear, certain. "I choose you," Julian said. "Not because it's easy, because it's right. I choose you," Elena replied. "Not despite who I am, because of it." They stayed. Later, as dusk settled, they shared a meal with guests. Bread passed hand to hand, laughter rising and falling like a tide. Julian fed Alina a bite of cake. Clumsy and sweet, she laughed, wiping frosting from his lip. A small joy, a shared mess, a life. Months passed. The company changed slowly better. Elena's office had windows now, not because she asked, but because it made sense. Julian came home earlier, learned to cook 3 things passably well. Burned one. They kept the napkin in a frame on the wall, a reminder. Sometimes in the evenings, Alina touched the pearl brooch before placing it back in its drawer, not hidden, just resting. One night, as rain tapped softly against the windows, Julian asked, "Do you ever wish you'd asked me first?" She smiled. "No, you found me when it mattered." He pulled her close. "I'm glad you went on that date." "So am I," she said. "It led me here." They stood together, city lights below, future steady ahead. Some love stories arrive loudly. The best ones arrive with dignity and stay.